In this demo, we're going to walk through what the Atomist Drift Report is. Our starting point is we've already logged into app.atomist.com, and you can see that we're looking at the IPCRM demo workspace. Within this workspace, I've already connected it to several GitHub organizations. And what happens is, as soon as I've connected those GitHub organizations, the Atomist workspace will automatically start scanning my repositories and analyzing that data to prepare what we call the drift report. And the drift report is really allowing us to look at your repositories and pull out what technologies are actually in use within those repos. So this can be things like dependencies that are in use. It can be things like project configurations. It can also be things that are more infrastructure related. For example, Docker file configurations or Kubernetes specs or things of that nature. And what happens is, once we attach an organization to Atomist, this drift report actually goes and clones the source code of all of those projects and runs a set of what we call aspects against it. So the drift report process uses these aspects to actually interrogate the project and that source code and pull out some of these details. And if we go ahead and actually click on See the Drift Report Now, this will take us to our first set of details. And here we can see on the left-hand side, there's kind of menu of technologies that are available within my project. So Maven, Node.js, etc. And these are all things that you can customize. So you can look for your own technologies that you're interested in. But if we look at this first sunburst chart that we're seeing here, it's actually showing me quite a bit of data about the Maven properties that make up my projects. And if we look at the top here, we can actually see that in my workspace, there are 910 repositories that have been analyzed, and that update or that scan was run 2 days ago. And what we can see here is this is the original data that got collected. So within each of my projects, I can actually drive down into this data, and I can see, for example, for these different properties, what repositories are, for example, using a particular Java version. So if I look at 1.8, this will show me all of the projects that are actually using that version of Java. You'll see on the left-hand side that we have a whole bunch of other technologies that are in use that I'm scanning for. So if we flip to like the Docker tab, for example, this will show for all of my organizations, all of the base images that I'm using, and then the versions of those particular base images. And we can see in this case that there's a lot of drift present. And the sunbursts are actually proportionate to the amount of projects or to the amount of drift for that specific base image, so that it gives you a visual aid to really understand like how similar or dissimilar are these technologies in my environment. And for each one of these technologies, as I mentioned earlier, you're able to configure what data you actually want to pull out. So these are some of the default elements, but you can extend this and you can include bits and pieces of data that you need to be able to understand. And again, we can use these charts to get a better picture of what's actually going on. So for example, maybe we only want to look at one GitHub organization, IPCRM demo. And we can see within that organization, here are the Docker base images that are actually in use in my environment. And then within these Docker base images, we can see, for example, OpenJDK has some drift out there. So the bulk of things are running on 8 Alpine, but there's also 9 Alpine in use. There's also some that are pointed at just latest, as well as other projects that are all the way on 6 Alpine. And if we click on one of these views, this will drive us all the way down so that we resolve the individual repositories, and we can actually see just what repositories are using this version. And if I were to click on these, this will actually take me out to that specific repository if I want to get more details and look at the source itself. But we can do more than just look at these details within the drift report. We also have this opportunity over here on the right-hand side to manage it, meaning we can set policies and define what versions are permissible in my environment. So if I click on Manage, the first thing that happens in the Manage view is we get a little bit more detail. We could see all of our base images, and then we see distribution charts for each one. And these distribution charts, again, are showing us the different versions that are in use and are weighted accordingly. So we can see that most images that are using Ubuntu as a base image are on 1804, for example. And then if we want to, we can click on this 42 repositories here. This will actually show me the individual repos that are making use of that particular base image. as well as what version those individual repos are on. Now, I do have the opportunity, once I'm in this manage view, to actually set what version I want my particular projects to be running on. So for example, if we look at Node and we click on Manage for this, we can actually select what version of the Node base image we want to be using. And we could say in my environment, for example, I want to run Node 11 on all of my base images. And what this gives us the opportunity to do is set a policy. So when code is being changed in this workspace, we have the opportunity to raise messages to our developers or actually send out programmatic updates to our environment, like what we see here. So before we're actually setting a version, do we want to try this policy? So I can go ahead and click on a repo to try. I'll go ahead and select this test repository, and I'll go ahead and run this on the selected repo. And what this will do is actually go out and it will open a PR against that project to make this change so that I can actually see those details. And while that is working, what we'll see is on the right-hand side, and you can see some previous examples here, you'll see as these PRs get raised and as those things get closed, so that you have some accounting of what's actually happening in your environment. And if we look at this previous PR, for example, what we'll see is the changes that were made, just like always, and we can also see some details within the PR body. And the idea here is as these pull requests get raised, your developers are the ones who are getting notified and getting told that their projects are changing, and then they can accept these updates. And then as this update is made and as new commits are made, Atomist has the ability to actually update these charts dynamically. As new pushes come in, we'll rescan that project to update the data that's in the drift report. And this will allow us to actually be able to determine, as you're rolling out these changes and as you're driving towards compliance, what versions are in your environment and what the distribution actually looks like.